Planet Coaster 2 is not yet released, nor is it announced, but in today's video we're going to discuss 7 topics that, if there will be a successor, and I'm quite sure there will be one, is featuring and what is in there. But before we jump into these 7 topics, which you will click down below in the skip marks, we need to quickly talk about the reasoning why I think a second part of the Planet Coaster game is coming. So let's start briefly with the fan base, because theme park games in the past have had a decent popularity, and you could have seen by the success that Planet Coaster had, that people were craving for a new title. Planet Coaster was basically the follower, the spiritual successor of Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. This has been modded heavily over more than a decade before people finally got a new game, and you could actually see that there is a lot of people loving this game. Now, obviously, the pandemic is happening right now, and theme parks have a hard time, but I'm pretty certain that after the pandemic, once everything is opening up again in the entire world, people will go back to parks and they will raise in popularity again, simply because a whole generation of kids and so on will go there. So there is a reason for that. And also, these Planet games have been rather successful, not only in how often they have been purchased, but also how much they have been showcased on YouTube, on Twitch, etc., especially at the very beginning of the games. Now, the second thing is, Planet Coaster was always meant to be the beginning of a Planet game. We know for certain that at the very beginning there were several Planet titles saved actually as an IP by Frontier, way before Planet Zoo has actually been released, and also it was called Planet Safari before, and there's like so much on there. I don't really remember what else was in there, but there was like even Planet Soccer, Planet Golf, Planet Restaurant, whatever. So the Planet series was always meant to be a series. So you could argue, of course, there could be another Planet game, for example, Planet City. Who knows? Maybe they're going to attack City Skylines as a Planet game. But when you look at the game Planet Coaster, it has been more or less finished already, and now with the Planet Coaster console version, even for all variants of possible gaming stations, if you will, for consoles, for PC, and everything has been done. The DLCs have been pushed out now, so far so good. Now this is all done, and if you look into the history of Frontier, you know that they have a huge history when it comes to these theme park related games, and I will actually include zoo games into that, because in a way zoo games are pretty close to what a theme park is. And now, here is the final reasoning why I think that Planet Coaster 2 is more likely than another Planet game first. Planet Coaster was definitely the pilot of the Planet series. It was a game that has been developed with the community, with a pretty long alpha stage. We went through the 3 alphas and the beta before the game was actually released. They worked a lot together with us. They changed a lot of things to build the foundation of the game. And as you could have seen with Planet Zoo, this has changed dramatically. Planet Zoo was not really built that much with the community anymore. It was really founded and based on what Planet Coaster has achieved and just pushed forward into a new era of their engine and also of the Planet games. Now, these are the things why I think that a second game is very much likely. I'm not sure when. I'm pretty certain it's not going to be this year. Firstly, because I don't think it is time yet, but also because of the pandemic situation, I'm quite sure they would rather wait another year, which I think is highly recommendable in that kind of sense. But yeah, so I'm quite sure there will be a new game, and I'm also quite certain it won't take that much longer. So if it's not next year, it's definitely going to be the year after, if at all. If it's not gonna come out 2022 or 2023 at latest, I'm pretty certain they won't do it. But I'm quite sure it's gonna happen. Now, as promised, we'll jump into the 7 points now. So let's do this and start with the first one. Alright, and the first one is time management, and that might be a little bit of a surprising one as a first point, but I just want to point my finger directly into the open wound or wound of the Planet games. I mean, as much as I love them, we all agree that there is a little bit of a problem in the management aspect, and I cannot express how many nights I've talked to, especially, and Seven, haha, okay, that had to be going in here, but especially Mike and Sylph and also Lady and, you know, also a lot of other people, or whether it be Portsley or someone else. We talked a lot about what our opinion is and why we think that time management is a very valuable thing to look into. Now, to understand what I'm talking about is the current situation is the following. We do have a situation where the game calculates a day as part of a month, as part of a year in a certain time frame that represents several days. But it's not really like that a day circle is anyhow connected to the overall seasons or the overall time. It's actually disconnected, you know. You have a day-night cycle, yes, but there's nothing else. You can change the opening hours, but it won't change much, you know, other than the lighting conditions and maybe the time where you can earn some money, but it's not really related to what you do with the seasons. And by this, I mean, we definitely need something that changes the dynamic of how to play a park game, because a park game is highly dependent on a day-night cycle or like a day cycle, because a lot of stuff happens before and after the opening hours of a park. If you look into a theme park especially, there's a lot going on in the hours prior to opening. Every coaster has to be checked, everything has to be set up again, the stuff has to be cleaned up, etc, etc, etc. And the same goes in the evening. You have to, you know, stall the coasters and trains back into their stations. You have to check if everything is right. You have to even deal with like stolen or lost pieces and stuff. All these kind of things happen, you know, exclusively outside of the opening hours, and this is something to look into in a game like that. So it would be really cool if we, for example, that's just like, you know, that's just an example, if we could see something. I think this is very important, a change that, you know, tackles this in a different way, so that you, for example, each month is represented by 2 full day and night cycles, so to say. Okay, then you have 24 days a year. I think that would be a cool basis, and that would be also a way how to include seasons, for example. You know, given that you could also change that into, let's say, 4 a month, and then you have 48 days, and so on, you name it. That could work like this, but just as an idea, I think this is very interesting and also very important that this is going to be changed, but because that will make the game, it won't make the game worse as a sandbox, but it will make the game better as a management game. Alright, let's go back into the next point and also continue with the management focus. Number 2 in our list is Switchtracks, and I know that many coaster nerds out there are craving for Switchtracks, mainly because they're cool and they're a part of a roller coaster. However, I do want to talk about them a little bit more connected to the first point, and that is the management aspect of things and also time-related things. If the game would feature, as talked about in the previous point, a day and night cycle and a daytime that is a little bit longer to play with, then you could also manage guest flow a little bit better. That means we have more or less traffic during a day in that dedicated park. And that means you would handle that in a different way. You potentially need to handle the traffic of a coaster, and by that you needed Switchtrack to put in more or less trains according to how popular the ride is, in which position of the park it is, and what weather it is, for example. You know, sometimes in hot summer, these water coasters or water rides, they are like pretty popular. People storm on it. Even in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1, that was already a feature. And once it's raining, people aren't going on these things. Once it's cold, they are not going on these things. So you do not need that many trains or you know, boats or whatever on that ride. So these things are especially important when it comes to the management aspect. And it would be pretty cool also for Sandbox, because you can finally do some working Switchtracks that have a reason to be there, to exist. That would be amazing. And I think there's not really that much more to talk about. So let's jump over to the next point. And that is a very interesting one. I call this the overhaul of the Blueprint system. And to many people this might be confusing, because this is one of the strongest parts of the Planet games. The Steam Workshop or the Frontier Workshop respectively for the console games is one of the strongest things of the entire Planet series. However, I personally, that's my very personal subjective opinion, think it has one major flaw, and that is the way how it interacts with the pieces available from DLCs or different other elements. Now, one thing that Frontier does extremely well and extremely nice is they do offer these DLC pieces even to people who don't have the DLC, with the little downfall or the little negative that you can't save the file where you use that, but at least you can download blueprints, you can download parks, you can have a look at them, you could even record a video, you just cannot save it or use the pieces yourself. That is brilliant. However, there's another thing what I don't personally feel is a good one, and that is the theme, the dedicated theme of each piece. Now, given you build a building solely out of fairy tale pieces, the category for it is fairy tale building, and you can use it once you have researched the fairy tale theme. If you do include one Western themed piece because you do like the texture of the wooden beam better, this whole thing is spoiled and no one who has not researched the Western theme can use that dedicated thing. And I think that's a big mistake, and that's a big issue, because that way it gets totally confusing what you can download and use in your park. And I'm speaking especially for these management and you know, gameplay people, casuals, people who want to play the management. They do use these blueprints in a totally different way than we Sandbox players ever would do. We never need to worry about blueprints being available or not to us because we just play Sandbox, you know. But for people who have to research stuff and have to, you know, in the best case, have to be careful where to spend their money if they're gonna go for fairy tale or Western or Asian or whatever, you know, they have to put their bets on one theme. And if like 99% of their blueprints are not available simply because there's one single piece in there, that's actually a mess. So what I would like is a pretty simple fix, you know, that once you create a blueprint, you can only choose one or maybe two, but you know, one main category that has to go into it. Like I'm building a castle and I say that's a fairy tale castle. And once you have this fairy tale castle, you can plop this down anywhere in your park once you have the fairy tale theme unlocked. Yes, there could be an issue with this if you do not have the DLC. That's fair, that's nice. You have to, you know, make it somewhat you know, down to that. But at least for all the stuff you have and the base game, you could go crazy and use these things in various ways possible. The only thing you have to lock them, but even in the scenario creator, we do already have the possibility to lock items, and why not? Just give them the full blueprint, you can plop it down, you can move the entire blueprint, you cannot just edit this. Fine, that's fine by me, but then you do have like a proper building, just as you experienced in older games, which also just had one building in a way. And you can still add some stuff to it. You can add some bushes, some pieces, some signs, whatever. It's still possible. So that would be a very welcome change, especially for the casual players or the players who love to use blueprints. And, you know, me playing franchise in Planet Zoo and using your blueprints, I was finally in the position to experience that, and I think that would be a very, very welcome addition. Now, let's head over to the next one. Point number 4 in our list is the progress of the engine. It is a weird naming maybe for this topic, but I had no idea how to name it differently. What I mean by that is, if we look at the progress that the engine made from Planet Coaster to Planet Zoo, and since we are in a kind of similar time frame in between both games, you know, a little bit depending on when Planet Coaster 2 might appear, we can expect a whole new level of this engine. So one thing we do have is weather, for example. Weather effects in Planet Zoo, cosmetically and visually, are stunning. They don't really add much to the game though, and that's a negative of course, but I hope that this is gonna change in the future dramatically, because weather, as I pointed out in especially the first 2 points, does play a huge role when it comes to management of a theme park. So I really hope that they carry that over, maybe with the change of how much impact it has to the game. And also I really would love to see a little bit more upgrade on the lighting. There is still some not issues, but especially when it comes to shading, the game still uses some tricks here, so to say, to only have a global lighting with a global shadow, whilst pieces don't really cast shadows from light sources. And I think, you know, at this point in time, the graphics cards are capable enough to render all of that, you know, with a fair amount of performance still in there. So it would be nice to especially see an improvement in the lighting conditions, and that would, if you look at reshade or something, would dramatically improve how the game looks and feels, and and additionally give some depth to it and stuff like that. That would be amazing. I'm really looking forward, and if I may dream to go a little bit out of the stuff that I think would easily be possible, or like not easily but would be possible, and I think fair enough to request. One thing which is a little bit out of scope but I would love is an improvement in foliage when it comes to maybe growables or maybe changeable conditions season. That would be great. Maybe it's just like a variant of a tree that has 3 different seasons to it and just switches or whatever. It doesn't even need to grow, but I think that would be really cool. And then we could go back into the days of a Planet Roller Coaster Tycoon, where you even needed to have like a maintenance service for your flower beds and stuff like that. I would love to see that, to have a variant that is dried out and died out, because that would be an element of surprise and would be really cool, because foliage is a huge factor when it comes to money in a theme park, especially in parks that feature a lot of foliage in them. I mean, I talked to Mike and he told me how expensive that is to maintain these flower beds and stuff like that. So that would be a really cool stuff if that could be integrated into the engine, but I do know that this might be stretched a little bit far ahead, but we are here to dream, and I wanted to talk about these points that I think would be really cool to make it the best possible game out there. Well, that's all of it for the progress of the engine. Let's jump over to the next point. Topic number 5 I want to talk about is transportation inside and outside the park. Now, as we did have some transportation rides in Planet Coaster, they were actually treated as exactly what I said, rides. They were not treated as a transportation vehicle. And I think this is what has to be changed in order to make your guest flow a little bit nicer. I remember that I tried all I could to make things working with trains and buses and stuff like that, but people do not use them as a vehicle to go from A to B. They use it as a vehicle to fulfill their need for a ride, for a certain ride. So just given they jump aboard on the train, let's say, which goes around the park, which you see pretty commonly in the Magic Kingdoms of Disney, or you could have seen back in the days of Fantasyland, which exists not anymore, but these kind of rides are there to bring people from A to B. But in Planet Coaster 1, they did actually not use it this way. They only used it to just have a nice ride. And I think this would be important, to have actually dedicated transport rides which people use to quickly go from A to B. That would actually save some performance. It would save from massive crowding issues that did appear in Planet Coaster as well, and actually in general just gives you a better idea how to utilize these pieces to make a better overall layout of your park, and also to make it necessary. I remember that Mike and also Mass Bandit, that they both did this for No Name Landia. They paid a lot of attention into the train that went through the park and stuff like that, which is very important. You used to see that a lot, but people just don't use it this way, and I would love to see that. So this was all for inside the park, but I would also love to see something outside the park. And hear me out. It's gonna be something different, and I don't need this to be super detailed, but I would love to see some transportation management that goes towards the entrance of your park. Now, at the moment, we do have spawners that randomly spawn people into the location of your park. And what I would love to see is basically, it's actually not more than an advanced spawner, if you will, that you can unlock over time. So let's say you have a spawner at the beginning that makes people appear from, I don't know, inside a cave and then just come to your park, but they only have a certain capacity. If you do want to have more people coming towards your park, you would need to upgrade that to a bus station, train station, monorail station. Well, airport might be a little bit too far-fetched, but you get the idea. That would be amazing, and you could also have like a delivery management transportation system at the same point. And again, at this point, I don't need this to be super detailed. It would be really enough to just have the bare bone little building that you just put onto your park, and then you have it. But you have to unlock it, you have to pay for it, and you have to pay for the maintenance. That would be amazing, and would actually add a little bit more of yeah, variants to it. And, you know, maybe it's also like a car parking, you know, that would be cool. And again, I don't need this to be like fully animated and having each individual car rendered. You know, give me a car park, which is just like a basic item, and every now and then you see a car, I don't know, beaming onto one of the parking lots or whatever, or just appearing and disappearing, just as the small exhibits do it with the small animals in Planet Zoo. That would be enough for me, but it would add so much more to it, also management wise and just for the atmosphere. That'd be great. But yeah, this is what I meant about transportation. Now, next point is number 6 in our list, and that is staff management, which we can actually close off pretty quickly because our Planet Zoo delivered on a lot more when it comes to staff management. We have staff only path, we have quite a lot more staff members, to be honest, and I think this would be also nice to also have in Planet Coaster, even though we got some more staff members in the end. But I would love to see a little bit of improvement, you know, just get in there for the next generation. I would love to see a bit more waste management, so maybe that, you know, our janitors do not only empty the trash bins, maybe they can only empty, let's say, 20 trash bins on one walk, and then they have to go back to whatever hub you have, and then they put it in a bigger trash can, and this has to be emptied by one of the previously mentioned connection points for waste management. That would be cool. It would add some more to the layouting of your park. You have to pay a bit more attention to making a good layout into your park. That would be great. Pretty easy. And a second big one is definitely staff vehicles. This is something I was really disappointed with Planet Zoo that they didn't feature that, especially after seeing the cars in Jurassic World Evolution, which, yes, it's a totally different game, but the idea to have a Jeep or something for bigger habitats or like for crazy big areas, I think is a good one. But now we do have zookeepers running miles and miles through a savanna-ish habitat, and this is something I really would love to be fixed by having vehicles, maybe underground vehicles, and again, I'm also fine with maybe having some hubs, just, you know, where you have two different ones to put together and then you have a flawless ride to put down. Something like that is cool. I don't need to have it like fully open and that they have like a complete, a traversable area for like vehicles. I mean, this all kills performance and we know it, so coming up with a solution in between would be totally fine, but I'd love to see some staff vehicles in this game. That would be amazing, and I think this would be very much helpful for improving the game. And yeah, that's about it for the staff management. As I said, it's just rather short, so let's move on to the last point, which is number 7 in our list, and that is, and I kept it for the last, customizability. And this might be something very strange when you know these games, because when there's one thing that they don't seem to lack, then it is customizability and flexibility. But let's just go a little bit into what I mean here. So surely we have a lot of piece by piece building. It is amazing and it's by far the best out there. We have a lot of different things to be used, but I have the feeling, and I know that many people would agree with that, there is this last step is missing, and since it was missing, they did patch it in with some additions in the past, but it doesn't feel organically added. It actually feels added later on with the best will and the best idea possible. However, I think now having all these ingredients already together, mix them into the core of the game, and it's gonna be even better. Now let's talk about what I mean. Let's say, for example, billboards. Now billboards have been added, I think, halfway through the development, or not development, but halfway through the supported DLC time frame of Planet Coaster, which means they added this after a year or so. We got billboards, and billboards were a huge thing. They improved so much. They gave you the chance to get so many cool new things in, and I really hope that they implement that from the beginning and don't do the same mistake as they did with Planet Zoo, where it took also again a year until they were added. So have them in from the beginning would be absolutely dope. And with this, we talk about a lot of things that we talked to them a lot until they changed it. And I talk about things like give us the shops, but also give us the shops without the shell. Give us the rides and trains, but don't just give us a ride and a train combination. Give us the chance to have a steel coaster and give us all the trains that would fit on this steel coaster. Give us a steel coaster and give us all the track pieces that would be possible on that steel coaster. In that way, you would make the menu way less messy easily, and you would actually have a lot better structure in there, and you would only have like steel, hybrid, wooden, whatever coaster, flawless, ride, blah blah blah, and then you have one item and you can change it. Maybe it's like an inverted track, it's the normal track, it's the launch track, and then you have all the items that fit to it, and you can exchange all the coaster cars. That would be way more easy, way more, streamlined, and also gives us a lot more flexibility of building all different kinds of rides that we want to see. Now, of course, I do know that this would, prevent from DLC type of things that we have seen, because once you add a ride, it's going to be terribly complicated, because people have done this maybe in the past already. But I think if you do it in a clever way to exclude certain elements, for example, and certain train types, you can still do this for a DLC in the same kind of way. And I think what also would be very much welcome in the community is when you have the flat rides. Flat rides were done brilliantly in Planet Coaster. I love them. They have been, the attention to detail with them is beyond crazy. All these little details you can see everywhere, but they were most likely very much styled towards one specific theme, and hence lacked a little bit of flexibility, which they corrected in the later stages of the game with the classic ride pack or the magnificent ride pack. They went into a lot less theming and gave us basically the option to theme it with pieces that they delivered with the pack, but actually left also one version open. And they actually, went even one step further, and they even gave us one of the rides as a second variant without the theming, because we asked for it. And that was basically one of these core moments with the arcade. They listened to us, and that is improving our experience massively. And this is something I really hope the new game would feature from the very beginning, to offer maximum flexibility for the crazy core gamers, and also offer some prefab things for the casuals, so you have the best of both worlds, and it will work together, and you can still bring in the Blueprint system. So that would be great, to take all the customizability that is already existing, but just streamline this a little bit better together to make it overall a better experience. So that's the end of our list. Let's jump into a quick conclusion, or final thoughts of this video. So here we are, 7 points that we discussed in this video, and I tried to really focus on things that are likely to happen and not completely out of this world. I also tried to really base it on things we already have in Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo respectively, and I would love to hear what's your favorite point. And of course, if you do agree with something or don't, let me know in the comments down below. But which is way more important, let me know what you would love to see in a new coaster game. And actually, since I have played a lot more zoo-related games lately, are you really into theme parks? Is it really something you would love to see as well in an improved game? That would be dramatically important for me to understand in the comments down below. I really would love to jump into a discussion with you. So let me hear all of your thoughts and what you think about it. But yeah, as of now, this is the list of things that would make Planet Coaster 2 a brilliant game for me. Surely there could be more, but I think these are the 7 main points of interest, if you want to call them that way, that I think have to be tackled. Surely there's a whole bunch of other stuff I have not included, which I think is more on a meta level. I don't know. I haven't included like which kind of rides I want to see. I haven't included which type of, I don't know, colors or theming I want to have. I haven't included what's my favorite foliage type. I think all these things you cannot get right anyways, because it's super personal, it's super subjective, all of these things I came up with. I try to at least talk about things that will make the game better for everyone, which I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, so surely this list is not complete and would not be something you could agree with on a personal level, but at least I tried to make it somewhat distinct in a way that it is, making the game better for everyone, as I just pointed out. So let me know, as I just said, your opinion in the comments down below. I'm out for today, and I really hope you enjoyed this type of video. Again, let me know if you did enjoy and if you want to see more of these type of videos. And just to clarify, it's purely my personal opinion, my list of things I would love to see in a game, basing on my experience with Frontier and the games, and there's nothing I know, I have heard, or whatever, just to make sure there's no confusion. It's purely my best bet on it. So, thank you so much. Stay safe, everyone. Have an amazing time, and goodbye.